I was married to Shen Yuan for 10 years, and in the end, we both perished together. In his final moments, he lay in the mud, gazing at me, tears streaming down his eyes, like twin rivers. Yuan, I forgive you. I had not spoken to him for 3 years, nor did I wish to now. Summoning all my remaining strength, I turned over, facing away from him until my breath ceased. Just as on our wedding night a decade ago, I had nowhere to go, not even a small couch to rest upon. And so, I endured the humiliation, sleeping with my back turned to him. At that time he slept peacefully, without a pair of trembling hands wrapping around him as they did at this very moment. In the 16th year of the Yongcheng era, the Weiguo Duke's mansion engaged in factionalism and corruption, bringing chaos to the court, leading to the execution of the entire family. Blood flowed like a river at the eastern street corner. Even several heavy rains could not wash it away. Even I, the dismissed Duchess of the Duke's mansion, was pierced through the heart by an arrow while fleeing the capital. It was Shen Yu'an who ruined me. He destroyed my entire life, and at the end, granted me freedom yet still chased after me, causing others to think we were inseparably entangled. When General Ji shot the first arrow, I saw satisfaction gleam in his eyes. It was Shen Yuan who leapt forward to shield me from the arrow. But there was more than just that single arrow. Ultimately, I was pierced through the heart by an arrow, collapsing before a group of pursuing soldiers. Beside me was my husband of 10 years, now divorced for 7 days, Shen Yuan. He looked at me gently, tears at the corners of his eyes. Yuan, I forgive you. I had been silent for so many years. It made no sense to suddenly speak to him, but lacking strength, I could only allow those stubborn hands to encircle me from behind. And then I fell into darkness. Yet, when I awoke, I was not in the underworld's hall of judgment. Yu family's 7th sister spoke in a low voice, asking me, Yuan, do you wish to marry Shen Yuan? My heart pounded wildly as I looked toward her delicate, warm face under the dim candlelight, and that mouth that chattered on without pause. That is the Duke's mansion. Although Shen Yuan's birth mother died early and his maternal family is insignificant, he is still the legitimate eldest son, the future heir. I had somehow returned to 11 years ago, to the night when 7th sister urged me to marry. I remember clearly that night she not only mentioned Shen Yuan, but also others. Only Shen Yuan was the most suitable. He was my own choice. When my feelings first blossomed, I had once glimpsed him during a visit to our mansion with my cousin, but this time I did not wish to choose him. I smiled politely as she finished speaking, then timidly asked 7th sister, what about Master Ji? Is his name taboo? Her anxious expression stiffened for a moment. Then, she replied calmly, Master Ji has long been absent from the capital, and since I reside in the inner chambers, I am not very familiar with his name. Indeed, 7th sister spent most of her time secluded, so it was normal not to know the names of men outside. Yet, she knew Shen Yuan's name. Not only that, she placed him among a group of men whose family backgrounds were inferior to his, for me to choose from. She was a good sister, but not my good sister, so I smiled shyly, lowering my head. Master Ji comes from a humble family, but is ambitious. I think he might be quite good. She still would not give up, but Shen Yuan. I looked up and met her gaze interrupting. He is not someone I can aspire to. 7th sister knows my mother passed away early, and as the eldest daughter without a mother, marriage is difficult and no one manages my affairs. I am already grateful that you have arranged things for me. There is no reason to put you in a difficult position. Her words faltered at that. Satisfied, I pressed my hand to my forehead, feigning discomfort. She soon took the hint and took her leave. The night was deep. Moonlight poured in, filtering through the hanging gauze curtains to cast a hazy glow upon the window. The chill of death had vanished, replaced by a warm body heat. I died in the winter, but now it was spring. Before leaving the capital in my previous life, my heart was anxious, fearing that upon arrival in Lingzhou, my stepmother would marry me off at will. I had lived in the capital for 8 years, spending my girlhood there. My bond with my father long faded, communicating only through letters on holidays. The Yu family's roots lay in the capital. When I was 6, I fell ill with a fever just as my father was posted elsewhere. My mother, worried, stayed behind to care for me. The following year, my father sent a letter from Lingzhou, saying he had taken a local gentry's daughter as a concubine, a measure born of necessity. My mother could not understand what kind of necessity that was and fell gravely ill in anger. Yet, she never saw my father again before she passed. Only the old servant who had accompanied my father for years returned to prepare my mother's funeral. After the funeral, I refused to return with her. She only said that's for the best. Thereafter, I remained in the capital, raised by the Yu family's second branch, that is, my father's younger brother and his wife. I was about to come of age when a letter arrived from Lingzhou, filling me with apprehension and countless tears. Seventh sister was the legitimate daughter of my second uncle. Her father was a leisurely official in the capital, with many wives and concubines, bearing numerous daughters. Only one son and two daughters were born to his wife. We had grown up together, eating and sleeping in the same quarters, and I affectionately called her a J in private. Upon hearing the news, she came overnight with a book of portraits, urging me to delay a few days and choose a husband to marry within the capital. In my previous life, I grasped at straws in desperation, believing she truly had a solution. But perhaps she had her own concerns and failed to notice how I had just addressed her. I regained my composure and called softly, "Shu Ning." Soon, a girl of about 15 or 16 parted the curtain and entered. Speaking gently, "Miss, has seventh lady left?" I smiled and grasped her hand. "She has. Please call Wang Yue." Within my boudoir, I killed my first person. I dragged the corpse out myself and threw it into the well, exhausted and drenched in sweat. At the well's mouth, I said, "Farewell. Reincarnate elsewhere, Wang Yue. Never meet me again." She was 9 years my senior, already wise enough to plan for herself when I was still naive. When news of my father's concubine reached us, my mother refused to go to Lingzhou. Then came a private letter, signed in my father's small script. My mother, furious, refused to open it and ordered Wang Yue to burn it. She soon regretted it and resolved to secretly go to Lingzhou to find my father and get clarity. But Wang Yue did not destroy the letter. Not only did she read it, she concealed it. My mother suddenly fell ill, and thereafter, it was Wang Yue who fetched the letters and medicine from Lingzhou. One bowl of medicine after another was fed to my mother. After 2 years of illness, she finally succumbed. Lingzhou did not take her seriously, instead, leaving her by my side until the very end, when she was given the chance to destroy my unborn child. All the truth was contained in that letter from my father. I could never allow her to return to Lingzhou. Just as she harbored the same intention, the next day seventh sister came again, bringing my favorite tea pastries. Upon entering, she asked, "Why isn't Sister Wang Yue here today?" That was odd. It was still early morning, and, by custom, Wang Yue should have been in the kitchen overseeing breakfast. I remained expressionless. Perhaps she went back to the countryside to see her mother. Wang Yue's mother had long since gone to Lingzhou. Seventh sister knew this. Fortunately, she did not press further and resumed the previous topic. "Xiao Yuan, it is not too late to regret now. Tomorrow, you will truly have no way to remain in the capital." I still maintained my indifferent demeanor, but I think Master Jai is genuinely good. She scolded me with frustrated affection. No matter how good Master Jai is, he is still a son of humble origins. How can he compare to the prestige of the Duke's mansion? A girl of your beauty and character deserves the best husband. She was truly merciless. How could she possibly introduce so many suitors to me? I have yet to be formally married, and I lament my own youth and folly in my previous life. It was merely that from the very beginning, I was certain I would choose Shen Yu'an. The others who were merely fillers held no real importance. Now that matters have come to this, she shows no sign of changing her mind. If that is the case, then I cannot be blamed any longer. At dusk, ninth sister suddenly sent someone to invite me for tea. Ninth sister Yusheng is the younger sister of seventh sister. In the past, we often quarreled. She believed I had taken her sister away. Since childhood, she was lively and radiant, always striving to be first in everything. Whenever I displeased her in any way, she would inevitably drive me away from Lingzhou. Back then, having been indoctrinated for years by Wang Yue, I was terrified of my stepmother whom I had never met, and I allowed her to bully me without resistance. Neither second uncle nor second aunt cared. Only seventh sister would sincerely comfort me, gently stroking my head and telling me it was not my fault. Because of this, Yusheng grew even more resentful and held a grudge against me throughout our youth. I asked Shu Ning to bring some tea pastries, and I gladly went to keep the appointment. It was springtime, and the weather was growing warmer. Above the water pavilion hung layers upon layers of misty, blue-green curtains. The candlelight filtered through like fog, illuminating half the pond. Yusheng was inside preparing tea. Upon seeing me arrive, she unexpectedly smiled. You depart tomorrow. Our eldest sister has gone with mother to our maternal home today, so I shall see you off in her stead. Perhaps she truly had cared for me once, and harbored feelings she dared not confront. Yusheng invited me to sit and personally poured me a cup of tea. I accepted it gladly and sat silently beside her for a while, when she suddenly said, "Eldest sister cares for you the most." Indeed, I once believed so as well. After 2 cups of tea, my vision blurred. She smiled sincerely. You cannot return to Lingzhou. Then, without restraint, she commanded the maid before me, "Go fetch Master Shen, tell him the tea is ready. I am waiting here for him." According to her plan, Shen Yuan would then sit opposite her, sipping tea and discussing philosophy, pouring out their hearts. Then she would have him drink a cup of tea laced with something, embrace the beauty, and fall into a deep sleep, awakening to find the woman in his arms was me. I would become his wife, enter his household, endure 7 years of cold disdain. In the end, I would be cast aside and left to an unhappy fate. Meanwhile, Yusheng would manage affairs at home, become the principal consort in a prince's residence. Finally, to erase all traces of her past entanglement with Shen Yuan, she would exploit his trust, fabricate evidence, and ruthlessly exterminate the Shen family. This was the life they had chosen for me. But I was no longer the 15-year-old Yuan. I must return to Lingzhou. Just before I lay down, I caught a familiar scent of green bamboo. He had arrived, Shen Yuan. Through the double layers of gauze curtains, I heard him say, "I shall come to propose next month." Yusheng coquettishly replied, "But you have no official rank yet. Without one, you cannot marry me." He chuckled softly, not knowing what he showed her. She exclaimed with timely delight, "You've been appointed as a Langzhong in the Ministry of Revenue." His youthful voice responded, "Sheng Sheng, I promised Wei would never dare to court a lady without a rank." They were such a couple, deeply in love, even if in my previous life I had chosen Shen Yuan. In truth, I had no choice. Yusheng could not be the one to abandon her lover. My 7th sister Yurong only had words ready when I confronted her in disbelief. He and Yusheng love each other. It was you who told me to make him your husband. Like a thunderbolt from a clear sky, I became the woman who schemed to steal her cousin's marriage, burdened with guilt for life. And all this was to comfort second uncle's family, to trap me in the capital city. This time I refused. They would not let me go easily. Only this time Yurong chose not to be present. Soon, muffled sounds came from beyond the curtains. Shen Yuan had collapsed. This time, Yusheng fell with him. The tea pastries were made by her elder sister's own hands. Naturally, she would snatch them away. They must have been delicious. After all, I had added something to them. I rose, straightened my sleeves, and personally stripped the 2 bare. "May you have a harmonious union for 100 years. Both of you." Those who came to catch them in the act found Yusheng and Shen Yuan. On the same day, a maid discovered a corpse in the well of 7th Miss's courtyard, and a concubine swore she had often seen 7th Miss frequently consorting with Wang Yue. While the household was thrown into uproar, I was lowering my head, entering a carriage. In a daze, I heard a voice calling me Yuaner, little Yuaner. This was the childhood nickname my mother gave me because of my round face. The coachman remained silent as we departed without looking back. In my previous life, mother had remained in the capital from birth to death. I had never ventured beyond 100 miles from there. I had never reached any other city. Upon arriving in Lingzhou, my father came to meet me at the city gate. He was far older than I remembered, bearded, slender as a pine. When he saw me, it took him a moment to react, his lips trembling as he said at last, "You have come." Then silence fell between us. I saw 2 lines of murky tears fall from his eyes and choked back a sob myself. When we reached the Yu residence in Lingzhou, I found the house festooned with lanterns and decorations, a scene of joyous celebration. My father seemed pleased and casually remarked, "Your brother is marrying today, and you have arrived in Lingzhou, truly double happiness." My mother bore only me, but I asked no more. Following the servant who led me, I found my own courtyard. Amid the clamor in the front yard, I tightly clasped the jade pendant my mother never parted with and rubbed it gently. "Mother, I have seen father. He is doing quite well. Just not as handsome as before, already a little old man. Rest assured, reincarnate and find yourself a young gentleman." Of course, no one answered me. Such a strange fate as mine was unheard of. The next day, The new lady summoned me to her side to acknowledge kinship. She scrutinized me from head to toe. The eldest miss is indeed beautiful and charming, bearing a striking resemblance to the master. I smiled softly, lowering my head. Madam is too kind. In the capital, uncles, aunts, and sisters all say I resemble my mother. A hush fell in the hall. Only the newlywed bride looked on curiously before her husband took her hand. The new lady sneered coldly. What a sharp-tongued girl. No wonder they say a motherless eldest daughter cannot be married off. You've been raised outside since childhood. For the next 3 months, eldest miss will stay in the courtyard to learn proper manners. It is also time to discuss marriage. Only then did I look up at her. Her skin was fair and full, her appearance gentle. She embarrassed me in public, but wore a smile, a mask of maternal kindness. In her arms, she held a little girl, about 5 years old. I complied. Madam speaks rightly. Just please do not make me marry right away. Returning to the courtyard, Shu Ning was indignant. No matter what you are, the legitimate daughter, how dare she treat you so? I shook my head. A child without a mother is like this, no matter how noble the status. What does it matter? Suddenly, a thought struck me, thought of Shen Yu'an. In my previous life, I pitied him for his mother's early death. I adored him, hoping he would sympathize with me, so that I might survive in that household with less hardship. But all his tenderness was never meant for me. He was convinced I was scheming against him. Moreover, in the 6th year of our marriage, after consummation, he requested an external posting, leaving me behind to be tormented by the stepmother. Later, when Yusheng learned I was pregnant, before he returned to the capital, she had Wang Yue change my medicine. I suffered a miscarriage. When he came back, his first words were a harsh reproach. Why hadn't I drunk the contraceptive soup at the time? Afterward, he paused. I only asked Shu Ning to drive him away and never mentioned a word again. It was but a mass of flesh and blood. Since I was 12, I had seen blood every day. What was so extraordinary about this? As for sorrow, sorrow is simply sorrow. He never inquired how. Bearing a disgraceful reputation, I came to be nearly devoured by the wolves lurking in the inner chambers of the Duke's residence, who seized upon any pretext to torment me, leaving me in that pitiable state. I poisoned Wang Yue. That was the first time my hands were stained with blood. He branded me a venomous woman, and I made no attempt to refute it. On those nights when I knelt before the ancestral shrine, I once hoped he would suddenly return, declaring the truth uncovered, promising to treat me kindly henceforth. Day after day, night after night, I waited for years. I grew from a maiden into the mistress of the household, and he inherited his title. My days at last grew somewhat easier, and the affection I bore for him ebbed away. Eventually, I no longer wished for his kindness. I only begged for my freedom. Yet, with eyes full of tender emotion, he glared at me in fury. Don't even think about it. On what grounds do you come and go as you please? Do you take me, Shen Yu'an, for a fool? From that moment on, I remained silent for 3 years. What use was there in speaking? No one believed me. That gentleman smashed the bedroom walls several times. He summoned countless physicians. Yet, I never once uttered a word to him. Meanwhile, he guarded against my schemes to exact revenge upon Yusheng. He hated me, so when he finally learned of my illness and intended to make one last journey to Lingzhou for my mother's Sakivan, though he had come to believe I did not deserve death, he refused to grant me a divorce. Until the end, when we died together, he still deemed me shameless. He said he forgave me, but what right did he truly possess? Shu Ning pitied me, yet I pitied her in turn. Reserved by nature, she often suffered mistreatment without complaint. Because she refused to conspire against me alongside Wang Yue, Wang Yue frequently targeted her. Her parents were entirely at the mercy of Wang Yue, Yu Rong, and Yu Sheng, and she thought it was merely the scheming of women within the inner chambers. Only when I miscarried did she suddenly, with tears and laughter, reveal the truth to me, and she died by striking a pillar. Before leaving the capital, I arranged for her parents' care. She did not know where Wang Yue had gone. She only remembered waking from a deep sleep to find that person gone forever. Gazing out at the moonlight, I whispered softly, "Don't be anxious. There is still one fire left to kindle." My stepmother was the daughter of a local gentry family in Lingzhou. As my father once said, in the 2nd year after my mother's death in a previous life, she was elevated to the position of official wife, holding the title of Lady of the Prefectural Governor until my death. What daughter of a gentry family could possess such means? When Shen Yu'an abandoned me, he rarely sat calmly, but once he did and spoke softly. "Your stepmother is no simple woman. The capital is vast. You could easily find a residence far from the Duke's mansion. There is no need to return to Lingzhou. I remained silent. He seemed at a loss and said no more. Yet, he was not wrong. My father's stepmother was indeed no good. Before the arrow from the young general flew, I was perusing documents Yu Sheng had given me. I had just learned that my stepmother was an adopted daughter of the Yu prince's household, and the entire Yu family had been executed a decade earlier. This was around the time Shen Yu'an came to propose marriage. Yu Sheng was certain I could not leave the capital and return to Lingzhou. She did not know that before Wang Yu had died. She had told me that my father had written a letter confessing he was coerced into marrying the Yu prince's adopted daughter. It was a formal marriage from the start. Only after my mother's death could she openly claim the position of official wife. By then, Yu Sheng was already a prince's consort, resplendent with jewels and pearls. She brushed a jade hairpin at her temple and smiled. Your father and stepmother do have some genuine feelings. The prince's household has been gone for 10 years, yet Lady Wang is still thriving. She threw a stack of papers into my face. I read them as I walked away. Her act was meant to shatter my spirit. My father had once been such a good husband and father. But because of my second uncle's incompetence and misdeeds, he was forced to be sent to Lingzhou. Our family thus fell completely under the Yu prince's control. My second uncle resented my father, and his wife and their youngest daughter also harbored hatred for my mother and me. What illness, what grave disease, what early death of my birth mother was not their doing. Fortunately, heaven had mercy on me and granted me a chance to begin anew. The downfall of the Yu prince's household was imminent, and since my father lacked the resolve, I would be the one to act. On the third day of learning the rules, my father suddenly arrived. The old female servants who restrained me awkwardly released their grip. Greetings, sir. But that refined gentleman suddenly lost his temper. His beard trembled with rage as he sharply ordered those around him, "Drag these troublesome women away to Lady Wang's courtyard and give each a beating." Cries of pleading immediately rose. He seemed deaf to them, his eyes reddened as he came over to support me, choked with emotion. "Xiao Yuan, your father's little one. Your father has wronged you." I remained silent. At last, he realized something was amiss and turned to Xu Ning. "Why does the young lady not speak?" Xu Ning, as if holding back for a long time, suddenly burst into tears. "Sir, you do not know what kind of life the young lady has endured in the capital." With heartfelt expression, she recounted how, after my mother's death, I had been humiliated and mistreated under others' roofs, and how before leaving the capital, I was almost tricked into sleeping with a stranger. She fabricated that I had since developed a speech impairment. Her words moved my father to tears. His hands clenched into fists. He sighed. "People's hearts are no longer as they once were," and said, "My second brother promised he would care for you." I thought he had at least some conscience. Conscience? Where could such a man possess conscience? Seeing the Yu prince's downfall imminent, the duke's household dared not offend him. Yet they had no hesitation in pushing me forward to take the blame for his precious daughter. His daughter had secretly consorted with a prince before the scandal broke, using my father's salt pass as a token of loyalty. To ensure the prince would not turn to marry me, I had to fill the gap left by their ambition. Seeing her performance bear fruit, Xu Ning pressed on. "It is a pity Our Lady did not even receive a letter from you before her death." My father stiffened. Then, unable to control himself, he bent down, clutching his chest, repeatedly calling my mother's name Tonger. "Tonger, I have failed you." That was it. Never forget my mother. Never ever forget my mother. He summoned me to the study and briefly spoke of old affections. Indeed, as Yu Sheng said, the month after my father arrived in Lingzhou, because he held part of the salt passes for Zhongnan, a group from the Yu prince's household came. They produced a handkerchief embroidered by my mother when I was a month old. My mother's life had forced him to submit, dividing part of the salt passes to the Yu prince. To demonstrate loyalty, he was required to marry the Yu prince's adopted daughter. The so-called adopted daughter was merely a widow from a collateral branch of the royal family. The court appointed officials to care for that woman's son, but secretly thwarted my attempts to go to Lingzhou several times. My father could not resist and could only send secret letters home, which my mother failed to read just once. Later, he died of illness. My father was broken-hearted, detained in Lingzhou like a puppet. He suddenly lost his mind and petitioned to resign. Yet, his own younger brother again threatened him with death. Years passed, and the stepmother schemed to bear a child. He remained in Lingzhou until a year ago. The third prince found a weakness in the Yu prince and extended an olive branch to my father. He cursed, "I want the Yu prince's entire line to be buried with your mother." I finally spoke my first words to him. "What about the others?" He closed his eyes, voice weary. "Let your father think it over." I said nothing and turned to leave. Men in this world are fickle. Even one as devoted as my father, whose wife was slain by an enemy, who lived with that enemy's daughter for years and had a daughter with her. That woman thus bore another identity, mother of his child. But I was also a child of my mother. His youngest daughter needed a mother. But what fault did my mother have? And what fault did I have? I drew my sword and went to Shen Yu'an. The woman sat high in the seat of honor, adorned with opulence from head to toe. My mother had long since turned to a handful of yellow earth. Beside her sat the son she bore with her former husband, and on her lap a coquettish young daughter. The tip of my sword gleamed with a cold light. Beneath the flickering candlelight, the jovial laughter of the crowd abruptly ceased, replaced by a heavy veil of dread upon their faces. Yet I suddenly smiled. Yu'an has just arrived at the Yu residence, and I am grateful to Madam for teaching me the customs of Lingzhou. But Madam should know that the Yu family came from the capital, and sooner or later we must return there. With a heart of reciprocity, Yu'an also wishes to instruct Madam in the customs of the capital. Perhaps my tone was too harsh, for not a single person dared to refute me. Only that woman forced herself to remain composed and said, "I am your lawful mother. You draw your sword to threaten Meadow. You intend to commit matricide." Even the great yellow dog in the corridor would have chuckled twice upon hearing such words. How can one who kills his mother's enemy be called a son? To acknowledge a thief as mother, her face grew increasingly panicked. "I am the daughter of Prince Yu. How dare you lay a finger on me?" Prince Yu. Even Prince Yu himself could hardly keep safe. Madam dwells long in the inner chambers of Lingzhou, and as the head lady, her word rules all affairs of the household. Perhaps you have forgotten, when one commits a fault against another, one must personally make amends. I am not here to trouble Madam on the journey back to the capital. At that moment, Shuning stepped forward from behind me, holding my mother's ancestral tablet in both hands. "I have brought my mother's tablet, Madam. Please kowtow to my mother 3 times. She trembled and then, if anyone dared to step forward to assist her, whether a single chicken or not, I would cut them in 2. When my father arrived, his youngest daughter was wailing loudly. His son had long been frightened into wetting his pants, and the new bride had somehow slipped away to her natal home amidst the chaos. The stepmother's hair was in my hand, and her head had already been bruised from bowing. The sword tip was pressed against her throat. She wept, "Master, a knight's union is worth 100 days of grace." My father's gaze was cold and desolate. Only after the maid carried the youngest daughter away did he speak. "You and I were never husband and wife. What affection could there be? I intended to spare your life, but my daughter wishes to kill you." Tears welled in his eyes. "Again, enough. You must die." He stepped forward slowly, breaking each of my fingers until he took the sword from my grasp. Suddenly, I asked, "Father, don't you wish to avenge Mother? At least, not as much as I did. The living are always more important than the dead. Wangxi was simply no match for me." I said, "Even if she dies, Father, I will never forgive you." His face turned ashen, but he said nothing. The next day, everyone in the Yu residence knew Madam had erred. After being repudiated, she was sent to a temple. For the sake of his youngest daughter, my father had spared her some dignity. It was better than the previous life. In the previous life, they lived out their days like that. Thankfully, before Mother passed, she only ever thought of me. I personally buried Wangxi outside the city, facing a mountain in the capital. Mother, you see now, don't you? They will all pay the price. Those trifling affections and loves have long since faded from their original hues. I no longer care. I only wish to avenge my mother. The day Shen Yu'an came to Lingzhou was precisely on the eve of my wedding. The elaborate bridal gown was laid out in the courtyard. The moonlight was just right, and Shuning spoke to me of my dowry. Master dotes on the young lady most dearly. When the young lady leaves the household, she takes away more than half of the Yu estate. I smiled with narrowed eyes. Money is good. Money is practical. As I spoke, a rustling came from the wall. Then suddenly someone fell with a thud. Suning screamed and, by the moonlight, recognized the face of the visitor. Like me in this life, our second encounter was also one-sided. Atop the waterside pavilion, she questioned young master of the Shen family. "Why are you here? This is the magistrate's residence. How dare you trespass the inner chambers?" The man lifted his head, his brows like ink, his features handsome if not Shen Yu'an. "Then, who?" He said nothing, rising silently and stepping closer. He examined the bridal gown inch by inch, his complexion gradually paling. Shu Ning, suppressed by my hand, could only glare at him with displeasure. He seemed indifferent, merely staring without blinking. When he had looked enough, he came over and sat down, then asked, "When will you return to the capital?" I shook my head. "I am not going back," he softly said to himself. "But I have no property in Lingzhou. I fear I cannot gather enough bride price." I laughed. "Which daughter does young Master Shen intend to marry?" Such generosity. Finally, he looked at me. "The eldest daughter of the Yu family, Miss Yuyan." I shook my head again. "You only spent 2,000 taels on marrying me. The jewelry was all made by myself. Clearly you did not come to marry me." He looked so sorrowful. "Xiaoyan, then, whom will you marry?" I smiled brightly. "The young master of the Ji magistrate's household, Ji Ye. Thanks to Yu Shengxi personally chose him. Elijah Yue is his cousin. Let him hate her then. For the treachery of marriage and the hatred of clan extermination are ample reasons for hatred. Neither of these two requires my hand. Congratulate me, Shen Yu'an." He did not. With those eyes full of affection yet laced with familiar hatred, he looked at me. "I will avenge you, Yuaner." I was more than willing, eagerly so. I never wished to set foot in the capital again. He was reborn. This was an unexpected joy. The day I left the capital, I vaguely heard him calling me, yet felt no worry. None in that mansion's stepmother, concubine, illegitimate children were trustworthy. Add to that the Yu family in the capital. Shen Yu'an had much to endure. Sure enough, it took him several months to reach here. In the previous life, he said he forgave me, yet he did not trust me, saying forgiveness was but a folly of lust and confusion. If not for that folly, why would he have suddenly agreed to give me a divorce before the clan was destroyed? Even when I became mute, he thought a bit of herbal medicine would make me better. I knew he did it to protect me, but his mistake was that, before dying, he insisted on seeing me one last time. So I said, if I live poorly and get divorced, you must come for me. Shen Yuan remained silent, standing in the courtyard half the night, his favorite dark robe soaked with dew, its color uneven and disheveled. I woke from sleep and exchanged a glance with him through the window. His voice was hoarse, uncertain, to whom he replied, "Very well." He climbed over the wall and left. But I lived well, because Jiyura was truly my own choice. In the previous life, I heard he never married and died in his 20s. It was just months after my marriage. This life, for some unknown reason, he was still alive and well, though likely not in robust health. Choosing such a man left me no emotional burden. I no longer wished to bear the emotional debts of any woman. Since I must marry, I would do so decisively and become a widow early. The day Prince Yu's household was destroyed, I took my newlywed husband to see it. Those people, whom I saw for the first time in 2 lifetimes yet, who ruined my entire life, were pushed and shoved by soldiers like lost dogs. My husband, cheerful by nature, watched with interest and said, "A yuan. That man just stuffed a gold ingot into his shoe." Goodness, the nearby soldiers heard that clearly. All their shoes were promptly removed, revealing numerous gold and jade treasures. Jie smiled, revealing a single tiger tooth. I laughed until I bent over. He was truly handsome. My Yuyan's taste was impeccable. If I lived 10,000 times over, I would still love a beauty. Most importantly, he was nothing like his cousin, the general who admired Yu Sheng and whose arrow pierced my heart. He would never become a general in this life. In the 10th year of Yangcheng, he perished in a calamity within the inner chambers. Until his dying breath, I never knew his name. Yet the manner of his death remains vividly etched in my memory. He shot me, a woman cast out from the household, who once admired Yu Sheng and had even contemplated marrying me for her sake. What does it matter now that he is dead? My husband too rose to the rank of general. Indeed, I have become such a venomous woman. When the news of Shen Yuan and Yu Sheng's marriage arrived, I was busy tallying the gifts received for my birthday. My husband had become a general in this lifetime, and his health was robust. Suddenly, I found myself less inclined to be a widow. After the birthday feast, his eyes gleamed brightly as he said, "A yuan. What else do you desire? I will find anything for you." Without guidance, I wrapped my arms around his lean waist, burying my head against his chest, and said, "I only want you to stay with me forever." As for that letter from the capital, like everyone before it, I never opened it. I simply left it on the table, and when the pile grew large enough, I burned them all in the charcoal brazier. It was not until a year later that I learned of the accident in which Yu Sheng and Shen Yuan, riding the same horse, had both fallen dead, the other gravely injured. Jia sighed deeply. One dead, one severely wounded. What is the use of such affection? Shoo. At times, he would say such things that left me bewildered. But this sentence I understood clearly. So brimming with excitement, I said, "Tomorrow is your day off. Let's go enjoy the spring. The peach blossoms in the outskirts of the city have bloomed. Want to see them?" As always, he revealed an unmistakable double standard. Yes, I want to ride a horse with my lady. I laughed and tickled him, and soon the two of us were playfully tumbling together. Now Xu Ning, from the 3 shops, has become the steward and grown remarkably steady. As soon as his foot stepped in, he was already stepping out, thoughtfully closing the door behind him. Another year has passed, and the springtime is splendid. Ai Yuyan deserved to live such a life.